We're going to conduct our panel discussion at this point. I'd like to introduce Michael Lane, one of the directors of the Long Island Capital Alliance, who will moderate our panel. Since Michael joined the board of LICA about a year ago, I can't underestimate the tremendous value he has brought to our board in taking charge of a number of our initiatives and been a tremendous assistance to myself and the rest of the board in helping LICA to grow and thrive the way it has, as exemplified by events like this morning. So, without further ado, if I can invite our panelists to join us on the stage and introduce Michael Lane.
Good morning, everybody. As you know, my name is Michael Lane. I thank you, Neil. I didn't actually expect an introduction, but I'm a 30-year financial services and technology executive. And today we're here to use our panelists who have deep expertise in this industry to help get further into what it takes for these companies to kind of go from the laboratory into the business world to monetize some of these investments and eventually make a difference in this world. So let me introduce some of the panelists here. We have Doug Jamieson. Now, Doug is the chairman and chief executive officer of Harris & Harris Group, a leading stage biotech investment fund that builds transformative companies from disruptive science. Previously, Mr. Jamieson worked as a senior technology manager at the University of Utah Technology Transfer Office, where he managed intellectual property for the university. This included assessing technologies in both the biological sciences and the physical sciences, working with patent attorneys to develop patent protection, and developing and marketing these technologies with industry. He is co-editor-in-chief for the Journal of Nanotechnology, Law and Business, and is co-chair of the advisory board Converging Technology Bar Association, and a member of the University of Pennsylvania Nano-Bio-Interface Ethics Advisory Board. So thank you, we appreciate you being here. I'm personally excited to have Doug here because Doug's company actually invests in infrastructure players in this industry, not only just the drug side, the medical side. So again, to get from the laboratory to the business world requires some of the players, like some of the ones we've seen today. Next, I'd like to introduce Joe Proto. Now, Joe Proto has been a senior executive and successful entrepreneur for 3 decades in technology and life sciences. He co-founded his first company, which was acquired by Wells Fargo, and founded his second company, which was acquired by First Data. He is currently chairman and CEO of Transactis and a board member of SmartSpin. Mr. Proto is also an LP and advisor at Metamorphic Ventures and FF Ventures, 2 New York City-based funds focused on early-stage disruptive web and digital technologies. With Roger Fine, the retired general counsel of Johnson & Johnson, and his son Adam, Joe also co-founded Wyndham Ventures, an innovation leader in life sciences technology, with the philosophy that people who have done well in their careers also have the responsibility to do well. Wyndham is a stage agnostic and has built a portfolio of healthcare companies focused on devices, diagnostics, material sciences, and digital health. Now, I'm also personally excited to have Joe here. Joe is actually a 25-year colleague of mine in the technology industry. And Joe also purchased my last company, which has freed up my time so that I can do fun things like this. Next, I'd like to introduce James Ryan. James serves as the controller of Scout Ventures. Scout Ventures enables entrepreneurs to build great businesses by providing them with the strategic support and capital necessary to grow and reach new markets. They seek entrepreneurs beginning at the seed stage and engage their proprietary networks to identify smart and scrappy entrepreneurs who are adapting to changing markets, disrupting established business models, and creating products that matter. In addition to his work at Scout, James is the founder and CEO of the Alumify Group, an outsourced CFO for entrepreneurial firms. The Alumify Group's clients are ambitious young companies that are seeking to make a positive impact on our world in a major way. They manage all financial responsibilities so that their clients may focus their full energies on scaling their businesses. I'm excited to have James here as well because he is a graduate of Yale. And as many of you know, I have 2 daughters who are going to be heading off to school in about another year. And they both expressed Yale as an interest. So we will be chatting about strategies to get them into that. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Steve Winnick. Now, Steve serves as the Managing Director of Topspin Partners, one of Long Island's leading venture capital firms. Mr. Winnick came to Topspin from Honeywell International, where he most recently served as a CIO of its $2 billion security group. He has been with Honeywell for over 21 years as CTO of the security business, as well as founder and president of its wireless communications services business. Mr. Winnick also serves on the board of the Long Island Angel Network and Accelerate Long Island. He received his JD from Georgetown University Law Center and is both a member of the Bar of the State of New York and is a registered patent attorney. He presently serves as a director of Thermolift, Cellmatics, Setpoint Medical, Miramis Inc., Cetera, and others. So we're glad to have Steve with us here. And I'm actually excited also about having Steve here because Steve is part of, as I mentioned, the Long Island Angel Network. And we are working with the Long Island Angel Network to work together to continue to promote growth on the island, which again, after my girls go away to school in 5 years, I want them coming back here. So very important partnership. Okay, so with that said, I wanted to make a few comments about the industry. So the US is not only the largest market for biotech, but it's also the leading consumer of these services. It's home to more than 1,300 firms in this space, and there are 3 major subsectors kind of to this industry. One is the medical field, which can go under the classification of healing the world, creating the drugs that prevent disease and promote good health. There's an agricultural side, which is focused on feeding the world, which creates products that improve crop resistance, better nutrition, and things like that in the foods that we eat. And an industrial side, which is focused on fueling the world. So this is the one you hear a lot about, creating a better footprint, ecological footprint on the planet, biofuels, things like that. Our focus today here, obviously, is on the biological processes and the medical side of this field. Now, the market here is tremendous, and I think you've seen that in some of the presentations that we had previously. But I thought I would give you a statistic just from another side of this. Over the last census period, the market size of this industry grew over 6%. It added over 100,000 jobs to the economy in the US. Now, by contrast, total employment in all other sectors was down by 2.9% over that same time period. So even in a down market and a tough time, this is a very big market and a very big growth market. All right, so with that said, why don't we start to jump into some questions for this panel so that we can get their perspective. And I'd like to really talk about this from a couple of different places, and I think with their comments and your comments, we can take this in any direction we need to. So the areas I'd like to talk about are, one is the attractiveness of different parts of this space, diagnostic, therapeutic, and the elimination of disease, the business aspects of emerging companies in this space, entry, exit, financing, valuations, the regulatory environment, which obviously plays a critical part here as well. A word that you heard in at least 3, if not all of the bios here, but disruption in the space and disruptive technologies. And then one of the presenters talked about this, but obviously a critical part of our lives every day and this space is big data, or the use of data, and how we use that to leverage this space. So with that said, let me ask the first question. So how can you guys help me? I'm sorry. That was my networking script in the hallway. So let me get the right script out here. Let's talk about the attractiveness aspects first. So while most effort in this industry is spent on the therapeutic aspects of diseases like cancer, autoimmune conditions, and infectious diseases, what really draws the most money? Is it disease detection, prevention, cures? Anybody want to take that? Or I
don't know if there's any easy answer to that one. I think that there are different risk-reward scenarios probably for each of them, and different paths that they each have to go through. Some of this is really long-term. You have to be in it for you have to be prepared to take good many years in order to realize what's possible. But each field has a different timeline, different investment requirement, and ultimately a different potential for payout.
And how about specific to your firm? So you guys have a chosen path, the long-term versus the short-term, infrastructure versus, cures or diagnostics or prevention.
So we at Harris Group, I think we've worked across that spectrum over the 30 years that we've been investing. I think, as Steve said, and for the entrepreneurs in the room, it's really important to know who your investors are and not only what their expertise is, but what they can offer from funding across that as well. So, for instance, at Harris Group, we probably do very little as we look forward of curing diseases, of big therapeutic plays. We are very much a technology-oriented shop. That's where our expertise is. And when I look at a risk return in the therapeutic arena, so much of that risk return is in the clinical process. Right? It takes a long time. Secondly, we are not writing $20 million checks, right? So we would be at a large disadvantage when you're raising, $30, $40 million as you move through clinical trials. So what we try to do is we try to find a spot where our dollars and our expertise can be put to good use beside the entrepreneurs. And it's not when they're relying on us, but we can't participate or write the large checks down the road that are going to make them successful.
Right.
It's a much better partnership when we can help them get to the inflection points that they need, and where also that is meaningful to us. So again, we tend to play very early stage. We tend to play oftentimes in the tool space. We oftentimes try to find companies that we can build that can control their future on the type of dollars that an early syndicate can bring in, but yet retain some type of option value. So we do play in the molecular diagnostic space. Occasionally, we look and we say, can we potentially partner early? But again, that tends to be binary if you don't control your future.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think many of the companies today that presented fall into that category, so that's good news. And from Wyndham's perspective?
Yeah, at Wyndham, we focus on devices, diagnostics, digital health. My partner came out of Johnson & Johnson, one of the 7 people at the executive committee who ran J&J. The therapeutics industry, I agree with you entirely, was on one of the slides, is $1 billion to $2 billion, and the outcomes are, very uncertain. But the whole area of investing in life sciences is probably one of the most compelling. It's lucrative, but it's also an opportunity for us to do well. Our focus, we're stage agnostic. So we'll invest in a seed round, $50,000, and we'll invest $5 million. We're very committed to our companies for the long term, and I think you can't be in life sciences investing unless you have a long horizon. We all like to think that our companies are a year or 2 years away from monetization, but the reality is we know that there are many false starts, there are many detours, there are lots of challenges along the way. Being a serial entrepreneur myself, there is no straight line to that exit. So you really need investors, I think, who are very committed to the team. And I think that in addition to the important focus that each company has, you really need the team committed down to their DNA to see through to fruition their dream.
Right.
Yeah, and to add to that, so I just preface, Scout is very, very early stage. So we write checks as small as $15,000 over the course of start with $15,000 and then add 25, 50 over the course of an initial seed round. But to kind of piggyback on what everybody has said, from our internal operations perspective, I do a lot of reporting back to our LPs. And in terms of showing progress, in terms of being able to take follow-on investment from our LPs and raise a fund ourselves, we need to be able to show tangible product within our portfolio. So in the sense of the scariness of, or maybe finding the right investor to fund development of a drug that's going to take 10 years and it's going to be all negative cash flow. You have to find that right investor, because someone like us wouldn't be able to do that because we're just not set up to continue to fund and write larger and larger checks, above $1 million over the course of 5 to 10 years. So not much to add, except just adding a little color as to how we report back to LPs and how we raise our own funds is based on the progress of our portfolio. And yeah, it's a little bit scary investing in a drug that might take 5 to 10 years because we can't show,
Absolutely.
it's hard to show tangible progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, any final comments?
Yeah, I guess we're a little
Yeah.
different in this regard, because we have a number of investments that are in therapeutics, that are in drugs, in trials. And I guess for those of you who may have missed it in some number of these slides, because it does speak to you have to be prepared to spend many years doing this. Most of the presenters today that were talking about therapeutics, their goal was IND. That's not the end, that's the beginning. So you get to IND and then you get to spend the money. So all of these companies know that they have stages to go through. Fortunately, filing an IND is a value inflection point typically, so it does attract different kind of money, pharma partnerships. But you have to get to IND and then the money starts really going, and you have to be prepared. If you're on the entrepreneurial side, you want to find the investors that can help you go through the stages so that you don't get part of the way there and don't have the wherewithal to proceed. And from the investor side, we look for great science. I mean, that's what we want to see is great people and great science that have the commitment to their products, because that's what it's going to take to get there, whether it's a $1 million investment or a $20 million investment. It's going to take time and patience and perseverance.
Right, absolutely. So we've already, I think, started to touch on it, but why don't we transition into the business side of this? And I think you've kind of hit it right on the nose. People are looking for, investors are looking for a great idea. They're looking for a way to kind of monetize that over time or commercialize it. And then they're looking for the team, the horses to kind of ride them to that goal. So why don't we start with the investment climate? What is it like in biotech? Generally from what you know, and then anything specific to you guys.
It's hard.
Is there money available?
Well, I think that I haven't seen too many projects that have come by our desks that we thought were worthwhile that didn't ultimately get funded. But it may not have been funded the way they thought. It may have taken smaller bites. It may have taken a slightly different path, or changing the indication might be as a target. It takes work because there is this especially in therapeutics, there's a very big gap between the science in the institution, whether it's Cold Spring Harbor or Feinstein or others that are doing that kind of work, and bringing it to the IND stage, which means all the preclinical stuff that has to be done. That someone's got to put up high-risk capital, and they see nothing. So it tends to be binary investments. It's not for the faint of heart, as they say. It's
Right.
Heavy
Absolutely.
duty, trying to stick it out.
Yeah.
I think, some of the trends we've seen, the first thing I would say, as a firm, Harris Group, historically has actually invested outside of life science as well. So electronics, semiconductors, energy, and life science writ broadly. So agricultural side of it as well as healthcare, even maybe some of the industrial biotechnology into that. We have moved almost exclusively into the life science side of it. So yes, the life sciences are really hard. The electronics and semiconductors are an utter nightmare, right? There's a bloodbath out there. And energy, because of the scaling and everything like that, has been difficult. So at least with our own dollars and with our shareholder dollars, we're saying the place we want to be is in the life sciences. I agree. We're building companies differently, right? So as an early stage investor, you've seen historically a lot of the groups we've done early stage investment with in the therapeutic area and life science area, they're in the microcap space now, right? They're building companies there where they have some liquidity. In fact, they don't hire venture capitalists, they hire a trader, right? They can trade around the position. We've seen a lot of the early stage investors move out of the field, so it's more difficult. So there are still great firms looking for wonderful opportunities, wonderful targets, building biotech firms. There's a lot more firms like us we see out there building. You might start with a platform. You might be developing an internal program, but perhaps you can partner a few of those earlier. And by the time you get to the stage where you're even thinking, pre-IND, IND, you might have revenue coming in the door from some of these partnerships. you might have the partners already at the table looking at other things, then at least give you more data before you decide to start writing the larger and larger checks. So I agree, they're being built differently, but they, but I think it is a really good area, and